Hello, Waldorf students and faculty. My name is Andrew Holt, and today I'm going to be providing you with an argumentative speech. The topic of today's argumentative speech is going to be, hopefully, me making the argument for you to not react with emotions, even though typically that's what everyone likes to do. So the way that I'm going to present my argument is going to be through the lens of the Sabotage Cycle. And the Sabotage Cycle is a class that I took about 5 or 6 years ago that I think that you'll really get something out of. So, let's introduce the Sabotage Cycle. The Sabotage Cycle is this little circle, right? And I didn't realize it at the time, but this little guy was dictating all of the choices and the decisions and the beliefs and all of the negative things that was going on in my life. This circle was running the show for me, and I had no idea. So I don't know if you can see it, but the very beginning here is the event. And the event comes in all shapes and sizes, right? It's what we did or did not experience in life, right? It could be something like rejection from a crush. You know, I was in second grade once. I wrote, do you like me? Check the box, yes or no. And she checked no, right? Tragic. It could also be somebody cutting you off on the way to work, or it could be something like me. I like to go to McDonald's and order the Oreo McFlurry, and they like to tell me that the ice cream machine is broken, and I like to get upset about that. Those are the types of things that we're talking about. So it's what we did or did not experience in life. There's two types of events that we're going to talk about. There's going to be, the first one is hurts and traumas. Now that can be, like I said before, getting cut off on the way to work. It could be being betrayed by a close trusted friend. Could be getting cheated on. Really any kind of physical or perceived trauma. The second one that we're going to talk about is the generational inheritances, right? So that's being culturally or religiously discriminated against because of who you are. So my entire life, I thought that the events that happened in my life were the reasons why my life was not going the way that I wanted it to go. Once I took this class, I realized that it's not the events that happen to me that get me into trouble. In other words, it's not the things that happen to me in my life that get me into trouble, but rather it's what I perceive about the things that happen to me that get me into trouble. So going back to our little circle, from the event, you have that first black line, which represents our personal perception of the event. Now, here's the thing about personal perception, right? It's limited to your point of view. Show this handy dandy visual tool here. Okay, so I like to call this the shadow box people versus the shadow circle people. All right, what we have is a cylinder with light being cast on it, and there's a tribe of people that can see the shadow box, and another tribe of people that can see the shadow circle. And wars, real-time wars, have been fought for less misunderstanding of what people thought was true. You know, for hundreds and hundreds of years, these shadow box and shadow circle people would be fighting against each other until maybe one day some scholar comes around and says, guys, this is actually a cylinder, and what we're seeing is the shadow that the light portrays off of it. And then both tribes would probably persecute that scholar for ever saying something so heretical, right? Or so out of line. So from the first black line, you have the event, then you have your perception, and then your perception falls into what you decide about the event, which is typically a lie because it's limited to your point of view. You can't know everything that there is to know about being a human being. And the lie is the limiting belief that we have about ourselves. The lie is, when it gets us into trouble, is the terrible and awful things that we think about ourselves that we don't ever tell anyone. So lies, when you have them for long enough, they work together to build strongholds. And strongholds are the pattern of wrong thinking that leads to poor choices. And when you have enough strongholds in your life, you get trapped in this idea of what you think the world works and how you think the world works. And you think that these are your only options. You have these broken tools that sort of work sometimes in a broken world. So, from the lie, you have the first red line, which indicates your personal pain. So, why does the lie lead to pain? Well, because if you believe something negative about yourself for long enough, it's bound to hurt. The lie hurts. Okay, so our minds are very powerful things. Whenever we feel pain, if it's physical or perceived, we're going to look for a linkage for what caused it. And then we're going to try to structure a defense to prevent the pain from happening again. An example would be a young child and her mother telling her, hey, don't touch the iron because it's hot. She doesn't listen and she touches the iron and she burns her hand. She immediately makes a linkage to her hand being burned to the iron being hot, and she decides that she's never going to touch the iron again. This is very much the same thing with this pain. So, from the red line for pain, you go into the response. And your response is literally when you act out in emotion. It's too late once you've done it. Okay, so it's what you do to make sure that you don't ever feel the pain again. I'm reminded of an event that happened recently with the Oscars where a famous person got up and he reacted to a stimulus and he made sure that he acted out with his emotion and he put himself in a bad way. So from his response, you can go into the second black line, which is the perception of others. And the perception of others is obviously how people perceive the way that you act. Right? Because once you react, it's too late. And then finally, you get what they decide to do to you based on their perceptions. And what ends up happening, it's really funny. Your subconscious mind has a funny way of presenting things to you and saying, oh, you didn't really deal with this properly. Here it is again. Try again. Try again. And what we do is we end up recreating the event over and over and over and over again until finally, so you see the second red line from the people, how people react to our behavior acts as another event, is the triggering mechanism for another event that confirms the lie that goes right back into the pain. And what happens to me is for 25 years of my life, I was on this unconscious programming where I would self-sabotage. And my argument for you is that you don't have to react with emotion. Whenever you react based off your emotions, you're going to end up shortchanging yourself and you're going to end up hurting your position. And this has been true for me every single time. And I think it's really ironic that we had a situation happen in a very public way where you saw it happen in real time. So anyway, that's been my argument for why you shouldn't react based off of emotion and how that can end up being a negative thing for you. Hopefully you've enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for your time.